All right, welcome to one of my first anatomy videos that I'm going to be posting on this channel. I'm kind of just going to jump right into it. I've been wanting to do these videos for a while, and if I mess up a little bit, please give me a little grace because it's my first time doing this. But I love anatomy, I love physiology, I love science, so I might be doing these videos way more often. But also, please note, I am an undergraduate student still. I don't have my PhD or anything. I'm a pre-medical student who just really likes talking about these subjects. I find a lot of passion in doing it. So just, you know, keep that in mind. So let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about the basics of the nervous system today. This is really just a superficial view on what the nervous system is. It's to get someone familiar with the type of terms that are used within the nervous system. Um, it's much more complicated than this, obviously, but I just really wanted to make a basic video about the nervous system. If someone maybe has not had any experience learning about it, this just really covers the basics of the nervous system. So let's just jump right into it here. So the nervous system in the human body is divided into two main divisions, and these are pretty simple. The central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, or CNS and PNS is the abbreviation for it. So the central nervous system is, I guess I would say, is kind of pretty simple. It's literally just the brain and the spinal cord. I have a little brain drawn there because I just thought it was cute. And also, it's that's literally what it is. It's the brain and the spinal cord. If this line that I just drew was the spinal cord, that's pretty much what it is because the brain and the spinal cord are continuous in the body with each other. I'll actually just keep it drawn like that, even though it looks a little goofy. So that's what the central nervous system is. We'll leave it at that for now, that the CNS includes the brain and the spinal cord. So then what's the peripheral nervous system? So I wrote a definition here that the peripheral nervous system includes all other nerves and ganglia outside of the CNS, including the cranial nerves of the brain. Now, please note the cranial nerves of the brain, I'm not going to be talking about in this video, but I will be making another video about them because it gets a little more complex, and I just think that's way too much for basics of the nervous system video. So ganglia are going to be where cell bodies are found, and I'm going to show a cross section that I'll show real quick towards the end of the video, where we'll talk more about ganglia and where they are on that cross section of the spinal cord. So let's continue up here though with the peripheral nervous system. So the peripheral nervous system further divides not once, but twice actually. So let's go over that first division. So the first division, there's going to be somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. And like I said, these are just going to be basic definitions. We're not going to do anything crazy here. So the somatic nervous system is going to be the voluntary side of things. And when I mean voluntary, I'll write up here in blue. When I'm talking about voluntary, I'm talking about structures such as skeletal muscle. We'll just keep that as an N or M, sorry, skin and joints. Things like that. And basically, when I'm saying voluntary, I'm meaning you are consciously thinking about it. So if you're going to do a squat at the gym, you are consciously thinking, okay, I'm about to do a squat. So your brain is sending signals to your quads to contract and any other muscles that are involved within that movement. So autonomic nervous system, look, if you see auto meaning like self, it's doing it itself. This is going to be the involuntary side of things. And involuntary structures we can think of like the heart, smooth muscle, and glands. All of these structures we don't have to think about to get them moving, right? We don't have to sit there and think, okay, I'm going to contract my heart now. I'm going to make my stomach churn its food. We don't have to think about that. These things naturally happen. So that's why they're a part of the autonomic nervous system. So if we go down, though, the autonomic nervous system then further divides into the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. So these two divisions are talking about involuntary structures, involuntary control. So you are not going to have these two involved with the voluntary structures that somatic does, right? So for parasympathetic and sympathetic, excuse me, you're going to have these terms, I guess these catchphrases that'll help you remember the difference between the two. So the sympathetic division is going to be your fight or flight. And basically, what that means is that is your body's response when you have an external stimulus that may be stressful. It may make you scared, nervous, anything like that. That's when your sympathetic division is going to be heightened. So, the most common example that I've heard in classes is you have a bear chasing you, right? If a bear is chasing you, your heart rate is going to increase, right? Heart rate put there. Your heart rate is going to increase greatly because you're going to be scared. What are you going to do? You're either going to fight the bear or you're going to flight, run away from the bear. So that is what the sympathetic division is for. It's for the body's, I like to call it, this is how I remember it. I like to call it like a stress response kind of. So I'll just write there stress response in little quotations there because, oh, whoopsies. Here I am messing up, because that's how I think that, that's how I think about it, is it's a stress response, basically. What are you gonna do in a scary situation? What's happening? You're getting a ton of sympathetic innervation, and the heart is the best example to talk about, but you could talk about other things as well. So what is the parasympathetic division? Excuse me. What does that mean? So that common phrase is going to be rest and digest. And it's literally exactly what I just wrote down. The parasympathetic division and innervation is heightened when you are in a rested state. And when you're in a rested state, your digestive system is more working because you have more blood flow available to go to like your digestion tract. Think about that bear example I just said. When you're getting chased from a bear, your heart needs that blood flow because it needs to be able to, you need strength, you need energy, you need the attention span, right? But we don't need that when we're laying down before bed. So the blood flow is more evenly distributed and it goes to things like our digestive tract and other things without the body. So that's it that I'm going to talk about now for sympathetic and parasympathetic. The main things you need to know right now is fight or flight with the physiological responses in tune with that, and then the rest and digest for parasympathetic. So let's go down here and let's talk a little bit more about the fibers of the nervous system. These are terms that are going to pop up a lot when talking about the nervous system. So it's important to distinguish the difference between the two. So motor fiber type is going to carry impulses. Did I spell that right? Yes, I did. Away from the central nervous system. Okay, so it's carrying away from the central nervous system. That is the main thing you need to know about. Oops, I meant to do that. Away from the nervous system. So what is sensory then, right? It's going to be the opposite. Okay, so it's going to be carry toward the CNS, the central nervous system. So these are basically like directionality terms. It's the direction of which the nervous system signal, the signal that is going to the brain or leaving the brain. These are the things that are going to describe that. So you have motor, you have sensory, and that'll play into some of the anatomy that I will talk about down here, because there are certain pathways for these directions. So what about somatic and visceral? So somatic and visceral are basically going to be um, related to kind of what I talked about versus somatic versus autonomic, right? So somatic is going to be voluntary structures. And then visceral is going to be involuntary structures. So it's pretty simple. It's kind of what we just talked about, but these are terms that I think are really important to know because if we go down here, we're going to be looking at fiber types more detailed and combining these words. I do want to note though, you will probably see afferent and efferent a lot as well, and these are interchangeable with motor and sensory sometimes. So afferent You would think afferent away, but it is not. Afferent is going to be toward the CNS, and then efferent, which I have always thought about it efferent as in exit, is going to be away from the CNS. So although you would think that, afferent A is going to be away, do not think that. I always think E as an exit. So efferent is kind of interchangeable with motor, and then afferent is interchangeable with sensory. You'll see them both used, but I thought that was important to note. So if we go down here, looking at fiber types more detailed, I want to talk about combining these words, right? So we have somatomotor, somatosensory, visceromotor, and viscerosensory. So what do these mean, right? So if we look at somato, right, we circle, okay, I notice here I have somato and somato. What does somato mean? Somato means voluntary structures. Okay, so I know that these two are going to be innervations for voluntary structures. Okay, well, I see viscera here. So that's going to be involuntary structures. So I'm just going to write out the definition of these so that it can be seen more clearly. So somatomotor is going to be impulses to skeletal muscle. And I'm just going to do an M for muscle. And then visceromotor is going to be impulses to, right? We're going to the structure from the nervous system because it is somatomotor. So motor is away. Impulses to viscera. And viscera, I like to just think of that as your internal organs. So what about somatosensory, viscerosensory? And why do I have these in blue and these in red, right? Well, I always like to write things in color codes. So motor is going to be away, sensory is going to be towards. I don't know why I picked those colors for this video, but that's that's just what I did, right? So somatosensory is going to be impulses from skin, muscles, etc. Because of that somato, right? Voluntary structures. So that means viscerosensory is going to be impulses from viscera, right? So those are the basic definitions of those. I'm not going to go into too much detail right now. Now, this probably looks a little weird and very scary, but when you see this like in a cadaver lab or something like that, this will make a lot of sense. And if you're unfamiliar with a cross section, it's basically like if you cut the body in half and you took off the top, and now you're looking straight down the spinal cord. So let's just start off with going over the anatomy of the spinal cord, at least in a cross section sense. So I'm just going to go over the structures. I'm not really going to go into detail right now about them. I can do that in another video, but like I said, I just wanted this to be a basics video. So right now I'm drawing this pink dot right here, and this is going to be the dorsal horn. All right, so dorsal horn. And if you're not familiar, dorsal means back. So this is going to be the posterior side. I'll just write that here, posterior, anterior. Just so we are all on the same page in terms of direction. So if there's a dorsal horn, there must be a ventral horn, and there is. So the other side here, I'm just going to do in yellow. This is going to be the ventral horn. And all of these are really, really important when it comes to tracing a nerve pathway. And I will probably do another video on that because like I said, I love talking about this. So in the middle, right here, this is going to be the lateral horn. And that's a really interesting structure because it has to do with, I guess, what I think is a cool innervation pathway. All right, so let's just continue down here. This is going to be the dorsal root, this green area. If we keep going, this blue area right here, this is going to be known as the dorsal root ganglion. And then the other side here is going to be the ventral root. What color should I do for that? We'll just do this color. So this right here is the ventral root. Notice though, there's not a ventral root ganglia, and that is something that is important to remember. Right here where they connect, this is going to be known as the spinal nerve. You can actually see these on a cadaver. It is very cool. And then we have two more structures we're going to go over here. So this red part that I'm coloring here, this is going to be known as the dorsal ramus. And then as you can guess, this other side is going to be the ventral ramus. So I'm not going to talk about these structures in too much detail. I really just wanted to show the actual anatomy of a cross section. And this is obviously a schemic picture. It's not like a real life. So these are the structures of the cross section of a spinal cord.